Hi there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome back to Being Human Hidden Depths, the Collaboration Global podcast by myself, Jill Tiny, and we have one of our fabulous members with us today from Collaboration Global, the wonderful Dr. Philip Agrios. Welcome, Phil. Lovely to have
Jill.
you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I feel honored. Thank you.
Very welcome, very welcome. We had a good conversation yesterday, funny enough, that made me kind of really glad that I can take that information and bring it into the podcast, because it was fascinating, the things that you were talking about. I will pick on that later. We'll go back to that later. But in the beginning is I ask most of our guests who are members, it's like, what drew you to Collaboration Global, and what is it about collaboration that kind of resonates with you?
Basically, growing up in my generation, I found that, we were taught more about competition, right? It was more about dog eat dog. You got to get higher than the other person. You got to do whatever you got to do type of thing. And then over the last couple of decades, it was more shifting into more collaboration or more cooperation type of thing. So to me, cooperation is much more effective, because that's what happens with nature. Even though nature has that competitive edge on there, everything is collaborating with each other, right? So whether or not one animal takes down another animal, that remains, helps with the soil and flowers and other birds and other things come into play. So there's a beautiful ecosystem that naturally takes place. And unfortunately, we've been not taught that or been hidden from that for such a long time. But now we're seeing that this is what's happening in the earth, and everything is starting to shift and to change. And there's no more that aspect of it. So I love collaboration with your group, because people there are looking to help each other, how to collaborate, how to work together as a team to see how you can impact more people. And that's why we do what we do, right? We want to impact the people. And once you impact, then money or desire or whatever other things that you want in, but it's that giving and then receiving. I have a little take on give and receive. I don't believe that you should give first. You need to give to you first. Yeah. By you giving to you first, you fulfill you, bring things up and have whatever you have, and then give to others, which will then give back to you. And that creates that cycle, right? So I always talk to people saying, you're in front of a fireplace and you go, give me heat and then I'll give you wood, right? Doesn't work that way. But no one ever talks about what happens before. I have to take and give myself wood first to give to the fireplace, in order to heat up and take heat. So we are in this thought of, I always got to give first, give, which is fine. But if you don't have enough to give, then you create a subconscious resentment or depression, or whatever word you would like to use, a protection that you go into, because you didn't give to you first. You didn't fulfill you first. And that's what nature does. It fulfills itself first and then gives. So just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that comparison to nature, because we are part of nature. We are nature, and we have taught ourselves to be apart from it, to the extent that we sit indoors and we don't go and walk in nature. We don't, to go for a swim in the river, and people are like, are you crazy? And it's like, well, no, everybody used to do that back in the day. It's like we forget how to appreciate and how to connect to ourselves as well as to other beings, which are all part and parcel of nature. And we often hear people talk about put your oxygen mask on first before you help anybody else, and it's that old airplane analogy. And it's so true, because if you're not sustainable for yourself as an individual, but also for your business and for your family, you're not going to be good to anybody.
Yeah,
So
you actually do a disservice to them, because you come across, oh yeah, I have this to give, and then it's not as maybe as valuable as the person thought based on what you're saying. It may be not as enough, or whatever the case may be. I mean, it depends on the scenario. It depends on the perception of what's going on, right? So this is just a really generalization of, certain situations.
now, bearing in mind, most people will have sussed that you're not quite from the same part of the world as me. And
Oh,
I
really?
wonder,
I do not. What is it? My hair?
yeah, it's obviously your
The
hair.
way I dress? I don't know.
I was just curious, because this dog eat dog world, this highly competitive state, this possibly toxic work culture, this I eat things for breakfast. It's like I eat competition for breakfast, and this kind of intense you've got to win mentality seems to, for me, be shifting now. And I don't know if you can see that on your side of the pond over in the US, because you're not far from New York, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in New Jersey, which is just a little south of New York. It borders New York.
Right. So I'm wondering if you're finding the same kind of fashion or the wave of the way things are going, because I believe that since the pandemic, there is a shift away from um, the selfish me, as in I need this, I want this, I'm going to protect myself, I'm going to have this. And people are turning into the how can I help you? What can I do? And it's the giving space, because we needed to come together and help each other because of the pandemic. Now, this is Collaboration Global sort of philosophy, but at the same time, the realism is you have to look after yourself first before you can help anybody else. And it's this sort of dichotomy. I wonder, are you still feeling that everyone in the US, not everyone, sweeping statement, people in the US are kind of different since the pandemic? Are they moving away from this competitive fear, scarcity, competition paradigm? Or are they still kind of in that rat race, that
I
wheel?
think I think it's a back and forth. There's still people that are doing that. I mean, as you know, in the US, there's a lot of bipolar, not bipolar, bipolar too, but polarization
Yeah.
of what's happening until it rips. And when it rips, you'll see people come together in certain things, because it's just not sustainable, right? People come together through catastrophic means, right? So my thought is you might as well, and even within your own self, make the changes, or nature will make it for you in order to force you to where your higher being, or your higher consciousness, or your soul, whatever you want to call it, your energy is shifting into that aspect, or you're going to dissolve and leave. So I really believe that there is a shift. There's been a shift since, I think, 2012, but it's just going to take some time, and it's been a long, long time. So, we can look at the masculine and the feminine energy. We're not talking about male and female. We're talking about masculine, like testosterone versus estrogen. Okay. Everybody has both. It's just who has more of what within that body, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the male is more about giving and, chopping and getting through, and more destruction, which is good, and it could be bad. And the female is more taking and more about going with the flow and creation and things like that, which is good or not good, depending on the situation, depending on the balance.
Yeah.
So we've been a very high male energy for a long, long time in this world, but things are shifting into about taking for ourselves, being okay with being peaceful, not always have to go into that fight or flight mode. But the more and more people are listening to it, I mean, spirituality, and go on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, you're seeing more and more of this than it was back in the 80s. I mean, when I was talking about it back in the 80s, people thought I was out of my mind, which I am, but that's another podcast. So with that case, it's starting to slowly see that with my clients that I attract. They have that thought process already. Some are there, but because once they understand what we help them to uncover within themselves, they start seeing that balance pretty quickly and seeing, wow, I can actually take time for me because it's imperative. Working out every day in high intensity is not going to be good for you, right? You need to take a break. You need to offset. You got to change things up. Same thing with the balance between your professional and your personal life. They're really one, right? So when you work on the personal, you work on the business at the exact same time, or your career, or vice versa. So it's always that balance, or they're never balanced, right? There's always a fluctuation. Everything is a fluctuation. So it's never like this. But the question is, are you doing this or are you doing this, right? So everything's a sine wave. Remember, those of you listening, remember high school, that's why you took that course, because of this podcast. It's a sine wave, right? Are you doing this or are you doing this? And again, depending on the situation, if you're going through a dissolution, a dissolving, be okay with that, because as you are letting go, you are also connecting and growing. So they both happen at the same time, dissolution and evolution. They have to.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. And it's about finding that flow that will then enable you to create and do the things you want to do. One of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said it, was like I saw a picture of somebody on a mountaintop, and it's like, if you think you don't have enough time to meditate, meditate for an hour a day. And if you don't think you have enough time to meditate, do 2 hours. And it's like, you just have to kind of, and one of my favorite books is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And it's amazing when you take time to understand you, to see what makes you tick, to uncover the ancestral history of around why you do what you do. And you think it's natural, and you think everybody does that, don't they? And then you go, actually, no, it's just me then. Okay. And why do I do that? And how did I get hooked up doing that? And where did it start from? And why do I still do it? Because it's not serving me. Then all of these things, once they can be, as people say, the layers of an onion being peeled away, and you get to that space of feeling like you will never know you entirely, but you get a good grip of who you are and what you're about. That's when you can put that power into your business, and then make a business that can grow and represent you well, because you know who the hell you are.
People misunderstand what really surrendering is. Surrendering doesn't mean you lose.
No.
Because people think of the white flag, I lose. If you look at nature, and this is one of the things I've researched based on 6 steps that nature uses to come back from her storms. And if you look at winter is what? It's peaceful. It's looking at the frozen aspect of water being still. And that's that stillness of meditation, or sitting down, just having a cup of coffee or tea on your end, while you're watching out, looking out the window, or whatever the case may be, and just being in that flow of just stillness. Because how can you plan or think of things to come to you, to tap into your higher wisdom, if you're always going around screaming, yelling, or people talking to you, right? Yeah. But when you go from winter to spring in the beginning, the early spring, things start to heat up. So what happens is during that time, it's the giving, it's giving, because you are now melting the water to give, to surrender what was within you outward to the foliage. So surrendering, it's when the flowers open up, they become vulnerable to the outside. However, if you plan well in your winter, if you know the knowledge of what to do, and have that trust and faith within yourself and your higher power, because there's a there's a partnership there. When you surrender, you are now giving and opening up. And then therefore you are now giving. And when you're opened up, now the pollinators in the spring can come and connect with you and fertilize you. So you must surrender in that thought process of giving. Same thing as if, all right, I want a new, a whole new wardrobe or a whole new whatever. I need to go into a winter of my own winter, right? Not wait until winter, but it's an analogy of that. Get myself all set up. But if I'm not willing to walk out and give the ability to show people my new who I am, because I'm afraid of ridicule and criticism and all that, then you stay in winter, which is the death, which is the dissolution, which is the frozen aspect of your life, right? Yeah. Same thing if I have an email. If you send out an email, oh, I sent out an email, nothing happened. It's just like the buds opening up and going, the flower going up. No bees today. I'm done. No, you know what? It's my red. I should have been blue. Or no, you know what? It's my location. I should have been over there. Yeah, that's the location I should be. Compared to just being patient and then altering in different things so that you can continue to surrender or to give. Remember, they're the same words. Excuse me, they're the same actions. They're synonymous. To give is to forego. To what? Surrender is to forego. To be grateful is to forego. So to forgive is to forego. They're all the same. They're just different words meaning the same thing, because it's only out or in. That's it, right? So I can go deeper with it, but I just want people to understand is that surrendering of taking the chance, but before you do that, you must have enough trust and faith within yourself and your higher power or your higher consciousness if you don't believe in that. And that's okay, and move forward. So I know it kind of went tangent on that, but I just thought since you brought up the word surrender, maybe to give people a different viewpoint of that.
Yeah. Yes, it's not a negative. I don't see that as a negative at all. It's interesting how words are so powerful, isn't it? And how people have connotations around them and don't understand or fail to see other people's perspective because the words that have been used weren't used in the context that they understand them to be. I like the forego and the forgive and all of that kind of analogy because it kind of resonates with me because of collaboration. So I always say in a collaboration, what do you do to start a collaboration? Well, you work on yourself first, because how are you going to collaborate if you don't know who the hell you are? You have to be able to do that, and then you take that into your business, and then that business is a collaborative, able business to go off and collaborate with other people and create something that might be wonderful for both your businesses, probably will be, could be, should be, but also you'll take something from that like a seed and plant it somewhere else so that that collaboration has another life and it carries on growing, whether it be in a new market or maybe to a charity or a new community, or you teach it to somebody else and they go and plant a seed somewhere else as they do that collaboration over again. So it has a life of its own and it carries on because of what you've learned from that work that you've done together. But I think the work that you do, the powerful work you do, is where people have come so far under their own steam, and then they're blocked, or they've only been able to come so far because somebody has taught them, you do this, you do this, you do this, you get a good business. That's great. That's all you have to do, because that's what I've taught thousands of people to do. And I'm like, well, surely thousands of people got different businesses. They can't all have been successful after you've taught them that, and that. It doesn't fit every single person. And it is about the individual is what makes a person, what makes a business successful. It's not the idea, it's the person that initiates the idea and takes it forward. So tell me how you got to this point of understanding about how we are part of nature, how we are, we have a higher being that we can turn to, that we can surrender, that we've got to deal with self-sabotage, all of these wonderful things that help an individual to grow and become something so much bigger than they were able to see before. Where did that journey start for you? How far back are we going?
A few decades.
Oh.
So basically, well, I used to be a chiropractor and integrative medicine practitioner. I used to teach, I used to treat thyroid and autoimmune patients, and we used to have really high success rates because of what I discovered a few decades earlier. And so basically, I wasn't looking for it. It just happened to come about. I remember that remember waking up in the middle of the night, right? You ever wake up in the night like you like someone infused Red Bull, like 5 cans, and you're up and like you can clean the house, in 15 minutes twice.
I've never had a Red Bull. I never really want one, but I get what you're talking about. I
Right. The other
understand
eye,
what
but I'm
you're
just saying is you're just pumped up, like you're not sleeping. So I got up and I went into my office and I was looking through some things that was going to work. And I opened up my drawer and I found my old goals from 5 years prior. Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
I was so excited. I was like, yeah, right. And I was looking at each and every one of them. By the end of the last one, I didn't achieve one damn thing on those things. And I was like,
Wow.
what? What's wrong with me? Am I an idiot? And something about darkness and silence. I was just sitting there like, why? I don't understand. I took all the greats and all this and and then something just told me saying that you're not being taught something.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I just went about and did whatever. And I found myself on this journey.
Mm.
And what was interesting was that I was able to discover a survival trait that we're born with that stops our success.
Okay.
And I call it the inborn sabotaging trait. Not sabotage as it undermines us, but sabotage as it protects us from the very success that we seek, because subconsciously, actually doing what we need to do and then sustaining that success is more painful. So we go back to the old way. And when we hit that point and we drop down,
Yeah.
it causes us to go into this kind of a hamster wheel type of situation, not knowing what is that. So when you start to release your personal professional power and you hit that wall, your saboteur, we call it the inborn sabotaging trait, kicks in to protect you. That's it. There's nothing wrong with you. There was nothing wrong with me because I didn't achieve my goals. I was just in protection because that's all we do. We protect and we grow. We contract, we expand, we take, we give. We're vibrational beings. And that's where that to and fro aspect comes into play. And when I was looking at this, I was like, this is too simple. There is no way. So I went out to try to disprove it.
Oh.
And over 30 years, researching thousands upon thousands of people, not only was able to prove it, I found a way to switch it off instantly, and it works 100% of the time. And we call it the antidote. Oops, over here, the antidote. And the antidote is the exact opposite to the saboteur. So when you use your saboteur, it's impossible to sabotage yourself. It's impossible to stay in protection, and you must go into growth. So when you hit that wall and you start to contract, imagine knowing the one thing that is causing you to contract and to protect yourself, and then using the antidote, the exact opposite. You now must go into growth. And now you're doing this compared to doing that.
So is it the same thing for everybody, or is it peculiar to each individual?
So I was able to discover that there are actually 3 basic traits that make up who we are. So you can write these down if you guys want to. It's the director trait, the communicator trait, and the supplier trait. So the director, communicator, and supplier. Why? Because through my studies and through my research, I found that all that we do as humans is we direct, we supply, and we communicate. That's it. There's nothing else. So when I realized these are the traits, because I also matched them through the physiological aspects and organs and stuff of our body, and that's where things were starting to make sense to me. Once I was realizing that, I found that there was actually a sequence. And when we put those three traits, depending on who you are, and you're born with this, by the way, and we put these in these sequences in such a way that now you have 6 sequences of human behavior. So there's really only 6 people in the world. So those of you who are listening who are speakers, imagine knowing you're part of 1,000 people. You're only talking to 6 people. When you're marketing to people, imagine only marketing to 6 people, not all these different things. And you can get to that on the subconscious level. So once you have this situation, we found that there's only 3 inborn sabotage traits out of 7-8 billion people, only 3. And then what happens is in that sequence, you have what we call your superpower, the bridge between the superpower and your saboteur. And they work kind of a seesaw in conjunction. So for instance, have you ever talked yourself out of a sale because you talked too much or knew somebody like that? Have you ever had anybody that you knew that talked themselves out of a sale? Huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, we call it, they vomit on people, right? Well, when I talk with VP of sales or managers, because we have a lot of them in our course, I ask them, what do you usually do? And the majority of them tell me, well, they need a what? A communication course. And I go, no, that's the last thing they need. They're great communicators. That's their superpower. What they need is to deal with their antidote, their saboteur. Once they use their antidote, immediately their communication is effective. The reason why they're overly explaining and vomiting is because of the saboteur. They're using that superpower.
Right.
So we've seen people shift. I mean, we've seen people make $84,000 in 2 weeks. We've seen people go from a 30% closing rate to a 90% closing rate within a week. All these different things because they realized why they were in that protective state with a potential client. See, when you don't sell, you're not selling and you're not closing because the inborn sabotaging trait's protecting you. So imagine knowing that part of you that's stopping you from closing that person. So once we know your sequence, I can tell you everything about you, never meet you. Right? If you had, and you have a husband, right? So I can ask you a couple of questions about your husband and tell you everything about him and never meet him. And then I'll tell you how you two interact and never ask you a question. Because that's how much of a science we have, how these 6 sequences work together, as well as how they create success, as well as failure or protection within that person.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that's like the old-fashioned magic act on the stage, isn't it? Where they can, work out, and everyone thinks, oh, it's magic, and it's just reality is the understanding the human, the nuances of humanity and where you come from. So you didn't start out like this. Were you always fascinated in people's workings, the working of the mind or the soul?
No, I was pretty much until the late 80s. It was in time. No. Yeah, and just slowly things started to come in and started downloading, and I just started to utilizing and started opening my eyes and start seeing things that were really right in my front of my face for years and never made those connections. And until I was able to just, to find that blueprint, and then the blueprint allowed me to really start keying things in. And then, because there's nothing like this in the world. I always tell people, if you want to look for something totally new, that you've never heard of this at all, this is what we do. There's nothing like this. No one else is teaching this. And it's different than the other personality tests, right? They come up with 4 quadrants. Well, they're missing 2.
Right.
And you have to take their test a couple times a year because things change. This never changes. This is set. And how do I know that? Because I've still with some people that are, friends of mine, my family and other people. And, sometimes I'll come up with old patients that come my way or clients, and they're going through something. And I go, it's your saboteur. And they're like, yeah, it is. Because what happens is people don't realize that it's the same actor, it's just different costumes, and they don't understand it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you kind of get the concept of you don't know what you don't know, and then somebody opens that door a little bit and you're like, what? All
Yeah.
this stuff that I
Yeah.
have.
And you want to, I talk to people and they're like, that can't be. And they're skeptical. And I'm glad. I love skeptics. They've always been my best patients and my best clients
Mm,
because, yeah. And I basically tell them is the reason why you're skeptic because you're seeing me as someone that screwed you or lied to you in the past. And you're saboteur protecting you, which is fantastic. Great.
yeah,
But you now have to discern whether or not, am I lying? Can I prove this? Which we always prove everything. Anything I say, we prove.
right.
And once you can understand that, then you realize, oh my God, there's only one thing I have to focus on for the rest of my life. And yes, and we prove this consistently every day with our clients and see major improvements because they're just focusing on one thing, not 3 or 12 or whatever the case may be.
Can I just pick you up on something you said earlier? In a fleeting moment, it was kind of brushed through, and you said when it was downloaded to me. Now we've had lots of conversations around, not you and I, but in other podcasts about people that have information downloaded to them, and there's a variety of meanings around that. Do you want to explain that a little bit more for
I say download it because I didn't come up with this. I didn't create it. um, it was just through observation and 2 o'clock in the morning, waking up and going, oh my goodness, and then working to 4 to 5 or 6 in the morning and or whatever, or watching TV. And then all of a sudden, I remember I specifically was watching a particular TV program. And then the next one, I usually didn't watch. And I was just talking to my wife and we're talking. And then all of a sudden, he says pi, which is not eating pie, but the mathematical
us?
pi. And I was working on that at that moment. And I turned, and his explanation just opened my eyes to open up to other things. And those were the things that were happening, right? It was down, and then going through the horrific things that I've gone through that broke me down in order to get down to where this was, whether it's here, who the heck knows? I don't know. But because it broke me down and gone through a lot of horrific events and other things, it caused me to now not only be book smart, but now I bought that t-shirt. I know I've been through that with you. And that's why I can become very not only passionate, but understand completely what they're going through and able to use that to help the person go even further and look at things in a totally different way. And I warn people, I say, when you tell me something horrible happened to you, I will say congratulations because you're evolving.
Yeah.
But at that moment, you're contracting. So great, this is awesome. Let's see how we can evolve from this. How you can rise above adversity. I have a course on that called Rise Above Adversity. And we talk about certain things you can do, but yeah, it's just an experience.
So can you describe one of your cases of adversity and how you were able to overcome it? Because presumably that happened before you were aware of how to overcome things.
Oh, no, I was aware of certain things. It was just forcing me. So one of the things that was a major catalyst to this, I was in practice and I had a huge multidisciplinary clinic and I had medical doctors and everybody working for me and everything else. And in Jersey, I had, in order for a chiropractor to do this, you had to set up things properly and lawyers and all this stuff, which I thought I had. I thought I had the best consultant in the world. And all of a sudden, Jersey went after me and a few other pioneer clinics because the medical board did not want chiropractors to hire medical doctors. So they went after me. So 3 things were going to happen. I was going to jail and lose my license. I was going to have to pay them back 3 times of what they gave me. So I was going to jail for fraud, lose my license, and pay them 3 times. So a little bit of stress. Okay. And then during that time, my father, healthy, my father of 71, got brain cancer. And then I had to go and we're back and forth and my practice just started to crumble and going through this whole process because I was 100% in the right with everything, but it was the smell test that they didn't like, right? So they were going after me. And of course, the aborting city lawyer, the mayor, he was a lawyer for one of the companies. So, hey, I heard that it would be a great thing to get the local chiropractor who was fraudulent. This would be help my political career, right? So they went after me big time.
Wow.
So during that time, my father went through that way, and I was going through some physical thing, and I was in so much pain that I lost the ability to practice. So I couldn't practice anymore. I had a thing called thoracic outlet syndrome and carpal tunnel that went pain down my arms. I couldn't really work my hands as well, and I used to get out of bed like I was walking on glass when I would walk on the floor. And I was in my late 30s and going through so much stress, going through not a great marriage as well. And then during the whole process of going back and forth, it came down to where I did everything 100% fine. There was all this garbage. I actually had to testify against the consultant. So nothing happened to me, nothing on that end of it. But what happened to me, it broke me down. I had to close my practice of 15 years. It was like losing one of my kids. And then going through that whole process, and then one of my daughters almost tried to commit suicide. They said that in 10 more minutes, if my ex didn't come back, and that she would have been dead. I went through a horrific divorce. I went through financial uh, uh, demise, 2008, to other things, to the divorce, and so many things were just pounding me for a good 20 years. And but I'm okay with that because I would have never discovered what I discovered. So I have no regret. And there's a lot more other things too. I won't bore you guys with more stuff that happened. But during that process, since you asked, yeah, it was revealing certain things and why does this mean here? And how's this going to help me? And how can I help other people? And then something else would come up and like, are you kidding me? And then later I would find something. And so it was an interesting experience. And then things started shifting and then with my present wife. And, now we have, 6 children. I have 4 bonus children. I have four stepchildren and 6 step grandchildren. I have 2 daughters, and I have a granddaughter coming on the way. I was able to leave my practice and all this stuff. And, things started because I just kept on focusing on, I know there's a gift here. I wonder what gift I'm getting. Those of you who are going through something like this, one of the things that really helped me was that when the problem exists, so does the solution at the same time. What do you want to focus on? And by focusing and walking into the solution is, I wonder what gift I'm getting. I wonder what gift I'm getting. Man, I can't wait for this gift. Or this is really interesting. This is so cool that this is happening to me again. I just wonder, right? And it's hard. And sometimes I would say it like 1,000 times a day, right? And go back to the old, why me? Or aren't I done yet? Type of thing, right? So again, giving you the ability to understand that you have to. So to me, the more stuff that you go through, the more potentiality of something great that you can give others.
It reminds me of my grandmother's saying that she used to say to us as kids, and she died at 96. She had a very tough life, born in the 1800s, lived until 1976, had 12 children. They all came, and considering she lived in the East End of London, they all came back from the war. But compared to today's lifestyle, she had a very tough life. But she always used to say, she always said her prayers every single night. She would get down on her hands and knees by the side of her bed and say her prayers. And she always used to say to us, there's always, no matter what's going on in your life, there is always a silver lining. Sometimes you have to look really hard to find it, but it's always there. And I've kind of lived my life by that because it's true, no matter, we all go through the rubbish in life, we all have the bereavements and the sadness and the relationship breakdowns and the things that go wrong and the why did that happen to us and he conned me and I've lost that much money and this job's rubbish and blah, 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 blah. It's called life, it's life. Stuff happens, but it is that attitude towards it of like, okay, this is happening to me now, but what am I going to learn from it? How am I going to take that on board? And also what messages are being sent to me. I'm a firm believer that the person that we are now, we have inherited from our parents and our grandparents and probably our great grandparents before that. So it's understanding that history of why we are who we are and how we are now. And it's understanding the makeup of, we don't have to choose to be in this space. Just so, for an example, I was, well, I am recovering people pleaser. And that was my mother, you know, keep everyone happy. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Let's keep everyone happy. Don't kind of, if everyone's happy, then everything's going to be all right. And it's this nervous state. And it took me a long time to kind of suss that. And I went through various courses, and you work on yourself. And all of a sudden somebody says, you know, how's that working out for you, Jill? And it's like, oh my God, I'm creating this havoc for myself. It's happening, and I'm the responsible person that's creating it, and I'm the one that can stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, it's a blink of an eye, isn't it? You stop it. What's
Yeah.
interesting
Through
is
my
that
research, you're that particular saboteur is the people pleaser one, right?
yeah,
And that's what you were born with, and the situations that came to you to show you how to discover your saboteur, and then help hopefully that you understand your antidote to shift it. Because a lot of times it's your superpower that trips you up, and people don't see that, and they don't understand the hidden trait and how this all works. And once they understand it, like, oh my God, this how now you can repeat success over and over again. And that's what we teach in our course, is that that antidote is the reason why you are successful over and over again. Like I told, I took the grades. I took Robbins and Rowe and Zig and all the other people, and I was still not being as successful. And I realized I was taking all that brilliant, that generalized information and putting it on my superpower and my bridge of my thing, not my antidote. And then once in a while, I would, like a blind squirrel would find a nut once in a while, it would hit my antidote, and I would become successful, but I couldn't sustain the success because I didn't know why I got there. And then I would drop. But now I, as well as my clients, know that one thing, that one antidote, in order for them to move immediately. The example I give is that you ever see the domino masters, right? They set up this beautiful thing, and they push this one domino, and it goes, right? And the last thing hits, and let's say balloons are released. But what's the last thing you see? The balloons.
yeah.
The balloons is your imposter syndrome, your anxiety, your stress, your depression, your over talking, your whatever. Everything you see what? Last. So what do? We take our coping methods and do what? We put them on the balloons, not the one domino. So what's easier? Hold down the balloons, stop pushing the domino. That domino is your inborn sabotaging trait, your saboteur. When you push that, every negative emotion that you experience comes from this just one thing. We prove that. So instead of pushing it this way down the road of frustration and desperation, push it this way, the antidote, and you must go into inspiration, motivation, and growth. Guaranteed, 100%, never fails.
That's a big statement, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
So, what is your dream for the future, knowing what you know, but also the people that you're helping? 5 years down the line, what is Phil doing then?
Doing very similar things, as in reaching millions of people. That's our goal, right? Right now, we work with business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and salespeople. And we actually guarantee our results or their money back, right? So we'll sit with them to determine. Not everybody becomes a candidate for the program. I'm very protective of my group, of our group coaching course, okay? But when you're added into that, then you now already know what we're guaranteeing you. And if you don't do that, you have 2 weeks. Within that 2 weeks, if you don't like it, then you can get the hell out, right? And your money back. So with that aspect of it, we really want people to understand that I'm trying to hit more millions. We're working on other things so people who are not in those categories can also access it. I'm writing a second book, but my original book that I have kind of explains more about the blueprint than more of the saboteur. So the second book will be more about the saboteur than the blueprint. So but we have on my website and other things, I think you have a particular link that people can go to determine what, it's a 12-minute video to kind of explain a little bit deeper of what we do.
Brilliant. So, I mean, for me, I'm always kind of thinking from a global space, and obviously you just said you want to help millions of people, but I just think, what if the next generation, or kids at school, in high school, could understand this stuff, so they don't have to be in that rat race anymore, because they're understanding who they are, and then they can
Right.
build businesses around who they can help and what they can achieve, without having that striving and that not knowing why it works and why it doesn't work, and all of
Right.
those kind of angsty things that we put ourselves through in order to make our business successful. Because like you say, you can get success, but it's kind of sustaining it, and it's exhausting
Right.
getting up that mountain. And then of course you get to the top of that mountain, you see that mountain over there that's even higher. Oh, I've got to go on that one now, and it's the
Right.
next level up. And how many people, well, we know from startups, there's so many fail at the first hurdle, and just don't sustain it. And quite often people that sustain it don't even know how they've done it. So you can, oh, it made my first million, great, and then it fails. Okay, so it's quicker to make the next 5 million, but
Right.
that fails as well. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I could be even quicker to make the next 10 million. But if you don't know those kind of, as you say, the antidote.
That's the other thing we're trying to are focusing on the kids. But why we know this works very well with teenagers, especially if you have children with teenage-itis, I call it, right, or even younger. We've had people from 5 to 7 years old with clients. Because imagine knowing, if you had children, imagine knowing each of your children's sequence. You'll know exactly how to support them in the way they need to be supported. We've seen shifts in parent-child relationships. For instance, we had a manager one time who was taking one of my workshops. I also do workshops for companies and corporations. And he came up to me, he goes, my kid's always upstairs playing video games. I can't get them to interact with the family. So I asked him a few questions. We ascertained his son's sequence. And then since he knew his sequence, and because he took the course, within less than a week, he calls me and says, my son's downstairs interacting with the family. And within 2 months, their relationship skyrocketed because he realized he was the one pushing his son back into the room. He was making fun of him and things like that, because that's how he grew up, right? To try to inspire him. But because he now understood his son's sequence, which would put him more into a shell, once he shifted it, the relationship grew. And then, of course, as we talked about, your business, your professional and your personal life are one. So when you use your saboteur, both are affected at the exact same time. When you use your saboteur and your antidote, both are affected at the same time. So he started using it in his business, and he saw tremendous shifts. He was doing the same thing as he did to his child, to his employees and other things. And as he shifted, his business grew. So all he had to do was just focus on one thing, and both his professional and personal life grew tremendously. And we see that consistently over and over again. But yeah, we want to do a course for children, for teenagers and stuff, to help them to understand what this is, and to understand other people instead of judging them, right? And that's why we judge. We judge because our superpower is the other person's saboteur. But you got to realize you can judge them, they can judge you, because their superpower is your saboteur. And when you realize it, instead of them going, oh, why you do this? What the hell? What's wrong with you? You can go, wow, okay, you are this particular saboteur. And then from there, oh, okay, I get it. Like one time with my wife, it was to a point, something happened. And she rarely does this, but she was like, what's wrong with you? And I went, I'm a director saboteur. Do I need to explain anything else? And when she said it, she was, okay. I said, so you know what I need. I need this, this, and this. So, and I explained it, and she's like, okay, fine. Right. And then when she goes into certain things, I'll know exactly how to support her. And that's why in over the 15 years, we very rarely have any fights. I mean, once in a while, and if we do, we'll, within, 5 minutes or so, we'll come up and, stick my tongue at her, and she'll start cracking up, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, so it's not only worked with me and my family and my kids and everything else, it has worked with so much of my clients.
It's having that shared knowledge and the shared conversation that almost makes it shorthand, doesn't it? You don't even have to explain anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, it's this. Do you remember the love languages, the 5 love languages that are out there? You know, once people understand that, that is so quick to cut an argument off of the you know, well,
Right.
you haven't been giving me any terms of endearment lately, and it's not my, that's my love language. So you know, that's not, you can kind of cut to the chase very, very quickly when you understand that there's stuff going on behind the stuff that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you don't know it, you don't know it, and you can't see
Right.
it. But the minute your eyes are open, it's like the whole other world that's out there.
Yeah, because I don't care how much you love that person. At that moment, you're protecting yourself from that person.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I would tell people you don't hate each other. Some people do, but the majority don't hate each other at that moment. You're just protecting yourself because that person is representing the thousands of other people and events that you are representing yourself. They are you. So I tell people all the time, everything outside of you is you. The person you can't stand and hate is a part of you you can't hate. They're just showing in your life in order to show a part of you that you need to deal with. And once you understand, it always comes down to the saboteur. And when you use your antidote, 2 things happen. Those people leave or they change to stay in your world.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yep. I have one more answer, so that's good.
When you were about 7 or 8, can you describe your sort of happy place? What did you used to do that was a really happy memory for you when you were younger?
Playing sports. Yeah,
Really?
going playing baseball outside my house or going down the street playing stickball or playing football, tackle football, or yeah, that is, as soon as you ask that question, yeah, basically then it was more baseball and then football, as in American football, not soccer,
Yeah.
which then I became actually involved in soccer. I became a goalie. So
Oh.
up to even in my college years. So yeah, I love soccer or football. And then you know, and basketball too, and volleyball, and that was my out. That's when I was the most feeling more free than being caged in a school. That's another story. But
Yeah, I think we've all got those happy places, haven't we? And the reason I say it is quite often, and I've stolen this from Simon Sinek, so it's an interesting thing where people talk about their happy place, and it has a great correlation to where they are today. And you've joined a collaborative organization, and your happy place is playing with people. It's not a
mhm.
solo pursuit. It's something that is kind of, you know, you needed others to play those games to make it worthwhile. And you gave yourself fully to that by joining teams and actually being in leagues and understanding the competitive nature, but at the same time, there's probably camaraderie and all the rest of the stuff that went with it. So,
But you got to realize also that camaraderie, but also I was playing with people that were toxic that was breaking me down in order to grow. So both ends
yeah,
happened.
interesting. Woo, wow, we've dipped our toe in. I know there is so much more to this to go forward. This is fascinating. Thank you for
Oh,
your
thank you
time
for
today.
and your audience. I hope this was valuable for you as well as your audience.
Absolutely. I sit here learning every day at these podcasts. I absolutely love it. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, Phil, what's the easiest way for them to get hold of you?
Well, you have a link right in the bottom of the podcast, so they can click on that, and that goes to our 12-minute video, and they can access a discovery call, which is a 15-20 minute discovery call to determine you know, how is self-sabotage affecting you, what you can do about it. And it's a conversation. They cannot buy anything on that call. I've had people, oh, no, you don't. I want to make sure you are a candidate. If you're a candidate for our program, yes. I say no to people a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So not because they're not worthy, because it's not right for them.
There
Right.
is nothing
So
worse
at
than
that
going,
moment,
yeah, there's nothing worse than going on a call and have somebody wangle and sell to you in a very professional and very clever way, but you can see it coming and you're like, I'm not going to buy, I'm just curious, I want to find out
right.
about it. And
Yeah.
actually, I'd rather be discounted and say you're not right for it than actually go and do something and go, oh, this doesn't feel, this is a
Yeah.
waste of money. Why am I here? Already
Yeah.
your defenses are up and you're protecting yourself.
Yeah, and once that happens, and we both feel that this is something they want to pursue, then we go into another hour consult to determine, can you 5x your investment? Can you
Mm.
um what can we can guarantee you? what does this look like, and I want to reinforce to make sure that this program is right for you.
Yeah, perfect, beautiful. Well, if you want to connect up with Phil, we'll have that link in the show notes below. But also, as you know, we have our Collaboration Global sessions, and Phil is often at our guest session, and you can meet him in person online at Collaboration Global, that you can find on our website, collaborationglobal.org, or you can go to Eventbrite and search Collaboration Global and book yourself on. It's completely free, and we have lots of inspiring conversations, a bit like the one you've heard today. So thank you again, Phil, for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure.